I'd like to call the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order for March 10th, 2022. And we need a call of order. Dee?
Marlene Newman. Doug Bruce. Daniel Schlegel.
Here.
Sam DeSaller.
Here. Here.
Matthew Seddon.
Here.
John Saunders.
Here.
Elizabeth Mitchell. Allison Chopra. Here. Renard Cross. Duncan Campbell. Derek.
Yeah, he can, Duncan is, let me see if I can unmute him. Ask Duncan again.
Duncan Campbell.
Let me see. Oh no. Give me a second. We just had our first hiccup. Give me 1 second. Sorry, council chambers. Make co-host, yes. Sorry, this is technology. Okay, now.
Duncan Campbell.
Here.
Gloria, I can see Duncan on.
What was that?
Hi, Duncan, can you hear us? And can you
Yes.
unmute?
Yes, I can hear. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, so he's talking, but we don't have him on this. Are our speakers turned down in here that we can't hear people?
Okay. Yeah, it could be, can we hear the people who are via Zoom from here?
Yeah, we want to. We want to change this to here.
Okay.
Now can we hear the far end?
Testing? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, Duncan, can you say something?
I just said that I can hear you. Can you hear
Excellent.
me?
Yay.
We can
Okay.
hear you now.
Okay, Derek Ritchie. Ernesto Castaneda.
Here.
Chris Turbaum. Not seeing any.
All right, let's move on to approval of minutes from the February 24th meeting. I'll need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Dee, the
Dan-
roll call?
Daniel Schlegel.
Yes.
Sam DeSaller.
Yes.
Matthew Seddon.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
All right.
Motion carries.
Very good. Let's move on to the COAs. Staff approval, COA 22-21.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are going to start with COA 22-21 for the installation of a backyard and front yard fence at 621 West 7th Street. The petitioners Ian and Kathleen Bensberg requested a 4-foot picket fence construction in the front yard and a 6-foot vertical wood board construction fence in the backyard. The staff originally found that sorry, give me 1 second. The staff originally found that everything complied with the near West Side guidelines. However, it turns out that Commissioner Chris Sturbaum indicated that it is not in the near West Side Historic Conservation District after all, but rather in the Fairview Historic District, which has does not allow for fencing in the front yard, only in the backyard, and starting midway towards the back of the house. So that happened this morning. Staff contacted our legal department, contacted the owners, the petitioners, and able to revise the COA for it only to cover the back and send useful information to the owners so that they can, from now on, work with their property through the Fairview guidelines rather than the Near West Side guidelines. And the Near West Side Construction Subcommittee had even commented on the project as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with COA 22-21, a staff approval that was revised today.
Thank you, Gloria. So let's move on to our commission reviews. COA 22-16.
COA 22-16 calls for the petitioners are asking for the removal of a chimney at 701 South Valentine Road in the Elm Heights Historic District. Jonathan Fiedler and Jennifer Schopf, sorry if I am butchering your names, are requesting the partial demolition or the full removal of the chimney. The chimney is not in a very viewable section of the roof. However, staff did comment that demolition in the Elm Heights Historic District is highly encouraged unless the structure presents a public threat or has been damaged due to a natural disaster. And staff found that it needed more information as to why the chimney is being condemned, if there are options to keep it. However, the neighborhood construction subcommittee give the removal their full endorsement due to the placement of this chimney inside center of the house. We feel it is very minimal to the house's design. This house is also at the highest point of the neighborhood, so it can barely be seen from the street or anywhere else in the area. So taking that into consideration, here's another image of the house, or the plan, sorry. And an image of the house. You can see the chimney is somewhat covered by trees, but that's neither here nor there. It's kind of in the middle of the house. It's also causing problems in the internal layout. Staff did not.
Pardon me, Gloria. We just were talking. We want to make sure that we're recording the meeting. Is it recording on your end, the Zoom?
I believe Klops is in charge of that right now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, pardon the interruption. Katz is on, so if we're good there, then we're okay. We just, as we all get used to new technology. So, okay, thank you.
Yes, so where were we? So staff felt ambivalent and wanted more information before making a decision. However, this was before the Neighborhood Association Construction Subcommittee provided feedback fully endorsing this. Therefore, staff recommends the approval of the removal of the chimney, and that's where I will leave it. Sorry.
Thank you, Gloria. Let's do questions. Let's start out with Matthew.
Well, I actually am kind of curious why they want to remove the chimney. So. Okay, I'm looking at the packet and it actually says the current chimney stack has been condemned. So who did the condemning?
Hi.
Okay, I just asked
John
John Fiedler to unmute, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I could not unmute myself there, so I was trying to signal as best I could. The chimney was inspected by Yield Chimney Sweep a few years ago, and it was condemned due to structural issues, and also prior owners of the house had tried to fix some mortar issues, but they had apparently used bathroom caulk to do so, and then lit fires in it. I don't know a whole lot about masonry, but using bathroom caulk and fire, that's really not a good thing. And he said the chemical reactions that caused put spider webbing of plastic up in the chimney, as well as there are chemical reactions that are apparently very not good for brick that caused. But there were also structural issues that he saw in it. Unfortunately, since the time of the inspection, as I understand it, the owner of the old chimney sweep passed away, and the company has, I'm not sure if it exists. I've tried to get a hold of them to see if I could get a copy of the report and have not been successful. I've called and left messages and not been able to actually get a hold of them.
Thank you. Daniel, do you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Sam?
No questions.
Allison?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to comments. Myth. Oh, thank you again. Duncan, do you have any comments or questions?
Is this chimney used as a flue for a heating unit or anything else?
No, it is no longer used for that. The gas furnaces are vented through sidewalls. They are high efficiency gas furnaces. None of the flues are in use currently.
Okay.
Thank you, Duncan. Ernesto, do you have any questions?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. Chris, did you join us?
I'm here.
All right, Chris, do you have any questions?
I just wonder if there's a fireplace.
There's actually two fireplaces, which are smack dab in the center of the living room. And the structural issues in the chimney were found on both of the flues for both fireplaces.
So are you going to discontinue the fireplaces or gas them, or what are you doing?
No, we've never been able to use the fireplaces. We had it inspected and they said, do not use these because the old chimney sweep said very specifically, do not use these. And we had to sign a paper saying we wouldn't, so he would not be liable.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to line the chimney, and you could do that, but I'm just giving you that information.
Yeah, there's a dog leg in the flues for the fireplaces, so he said you could not actually drop a lining down.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's a very interesting design.
Okay, that's outside of our jurisdiction. I'm just thinking ahead for a future owner that might want to use the fireplaces or something. Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you, Chris. So we'll move on to comments. Matthew?
Well, I guess since it sounds like it's a semi-dangerous chimney that poses at least a public threat to the occupants of the house and potentially to someone outside, I suppose, if it came down, and the district isn't perturbed, I'm not perturbed.
Thank you, Matthew. Daniel?
Yeah, I think the Elms Heights with their endorsement, I don't have any other comments.
Great, thank you. Allison?
Thank you. I'll be making a vote tonight, and it will be to approve this certificate of appropriateness based on what my colleagues already said.
Great, thank you. And Sam?
I have no comments.
Okay, and I'm in agreement with my colleagues here. So we need a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. God. Apologize. Duncan, any comments?
No.
Ernesto, any comments?
No comments tonight. Thank you.
And Chris, any comments?
Yes, the condition really means that you need to repair it. So we always get talk about condition, but I am understanding the neighborhood is not concerned, and I'm not concerned then.
Thank you, Chris. Now we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
This is a move to approve, yes?
Yeah, move to
Yes.
approve.
Yes, then.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to COA 22-17, 520 South Hawthorne Street. And the petitioner's with us?
Hi, if the petitioner is with us on via Zoom, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So certificate of appropriateness, COA 22-11 is calling for the solar panel installation at 320 South Hawthorne Street in the Elm Heights Historic District. Upon reviewing the application material, staff understands that solar panel installation is highly dependent and limited to sun movement, even if that means they will be visible from the main rights of way, in this case, Hawthorne Drive and 2nd Street. So that, taking that into consideration, and the Elm Heights Construction Subcommittee that recommends the approval with recommendations. So the committee supports the installation of solar panels for this house. However, there were some concerns in the placement and number of panels. The house is rated very high in its contribution by location, as in Hawthorne Street and its merit. It is also close to the top of the hill, and this should make the panels less obvious, but a tight dark hue installation is vital. We recommend a better rendering of the panel locations before approval. Also, the location of extra mechanical and wiring should be reviewed. We didn't see any pictures of what they would look like, and they probably will be visible from Hawthorne. I did ask about potential battery installation, but it's just going to be the panels as staff. So let me see. This is another image of the house as it is at the moment. And these are the proposed locations for the solar panels. So 2nd Street, it's south facing towards 2nd Street, which means that that's, the street view also is coincides with the better sun reach. So yes, yes. Give me 1 second. I need to so I'll let him go. So with that, I finished my presentation. I leave it with you. However, the petitioner has their hand raised at
Okay.
the moment.
All right.
So I'm asking them to mute.
Petitioner,
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Thank you for taking the time here. So yeah, that installation, we're gonna try to use the nicest black panels, which are the LG line, use black railing, and there would be no mechanical that would be seen. Everything would be integrated into the attic and then down through a chase in the house. And just everything we would do would just try to be as tidy and clean as we could possibly make it. Being Harmony students and being in the neighborhood, we drive by it every single day. So we really would try to just make sure to give the care to the structure that it deserves. And then I would just say that like a K-gutter or a asphalt roof, when the life of the product's over and it's removed, you'll never know that it was ever there.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to questions. Matthew?
No question.
Sam?
Could the petitioner speak to the overall height of the assembly above the surface of the roof, including the racks? I know that the panels are 40 millimeters thick, which is about 1.5 inches, but how far up off the roof are these guys going to sit?
About 4 inches. We have about 1.5 inches of variability. Obviously, the higher they are off the roof, the better the production is, just because heat is the enemy of the solar panel. But they're going to be very low profile and going to be essentially lining the roof in its profile. So yeah, 4 inches, maybe 3, depending, but not like a foot off the roof or anything of that nature.
Could you explain the heat is the enemy of the solar panel question? Because if wait, let me finish my question. If the panels are above the roof and shading the roof, the only heat is going to be on the surfaces adjacent to the roof, right?
Yes. Without getting too technical, the heat brings down the production because it increases resistance. So sometimes you just see panels that are literally laying on the roof, and it just traps a lot more heat. So if we get some wind that can move under the panel, that's better. But generally, we like to keep them as low as possible, also because we don't want any more wind load than what the minimum is going to be. So in that sense, they're going to be pretty tight to the roof.
Thank you.
Allison?
Yes. One question. Has the historic preservation body of that neighborhood made any remarks? The Elm Heights folks?
Go on. Is that for me to answer or for somebody else?
Sorry, these are different than at council table that I'm used to every day. Did you get the question?
Yeah.
And I think it's for staff. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. The Elm Heights Construction Subcommittee, they recommended approval. However, they had recommendations which are listed. So they wanted to have a bit more information on the dimensions of the panels and the sort of the infrastructure, the wiring and everything. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Daniel?
No questions.
And actually, Allison asked my question, what the neighborhood was asking about the report. Thank you. Duncan?
I don't have any questions.
Ernesto?
Yes, this is a question for the petitioner. Do you have a preferred location for the panels attached to the wall in the exterior?
Preferred location?
Yeah.
South is always preferred. In this case, the way that the roof line and the amount of energy that the Applegates use, we would always go south first, west would be second, east is going to be third. But in this case, the only thing, in a lot of ways, the east is going to look the cleanest because it has the most contiguous amount of real estate. So in that sense of things, again, south is what we would be looking for first. But in this case, with the Applegates and the removal of their tree that was problematic on their house, any of those are all going to give a good harvest. But they use a lot of power, and I think they're going to get an electric car, and so they will only, I'm sure, use more power in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, the computer rendering is what's a little concerning because it has the panels sticking over the edge of the roof and over the ridges, and I'm sure that's not really accurate. That's just what you can do on the computer. But I would ask staff, is that why you might want to review the installation if it's approved so that it doesn't look like this rendering?
Yeah, yeah, sorry.
I think we can address that in the motion.
Thank you.
And can I put one comment in, is just that the National Electric Code and the Indiana Residential Code, neither one of those allow for panels to be hanging over any part of an eave or over the hip. So in that sense, if that ever happens, that's really a flagrant building code violation, just so the council kind of knows.
Right, but you see the drawing that we're referring to where it shows them doing that.
Yeah, and what the problem is if it's a lot of like a mid-century house where it would just be a very rectangle line, it's real easy in paint to kind of make it look like a representational. Whereas in something like that, the problem that we have is just, when you're trying to make boxes on a two-dimensional, it doesn't turn out the way that it's just, I
That's what I thought.
It's not representative.
Right, and wouldn't you agree that the east facing is the most visible from the street and the road?
Yes, sir. That's where if you're at Second and Hawthorne, you would see it the most. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris. All right. Let's move on to comments. Sam?
First, let me say that I'm a big proponent of solar, and I appreciate that the petitioner is installing this now before net metering sunsets on June 30th. That said, I would love to approve this with the caveats that it gets installed such that no panels overhang the ridges, which is slightly different from what you and Chris were talking about. So it's all got to be contained within the plane of the roof on which it sits. And, I'm sure you're going to do that, but I just want to stipulate that so there's no confusion. And then the other thing that I would love to see happen is minimizing the height and keeping it, say, give yourself 2.5 inches or something underneath for air ventilation so that they're tight to the roof as possible, but it's still, you get some vents under there. Second Street, which is along the east, is, I actually think, the highest visibility. It's the most traffic street. My daughter goes to Harmony, so I go by your house a lot, and I love your house. It's pretty fantastic. I really hope someday somebody opens up that second floor porch on 2nd Street, because it's a fantastic house. But I'm going to support this installation.
Thank you, Sam. Daniel?
I have no comments.
Same here. I have no comments and in agreement of the solar energy. I think it's a great thing these folks are doing. Duncan, do you have any comments?
No.
Ernesto?
No comments, thanks.
Chris?
Yeah, I noticed a neighbor who had solar panels, and I'm not sure they ever got approved, but I'm not looking there anymore. Yeah, sometimes I like to think that people might not want to put them on the highest visibility point, but I understand that ultimately everything is temporary.
All right, thank you, Chris. So we need a motion.
I'll move to approve with the caveat that the panels be installed without overhanging the eaves or ridges.
All right, second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Dee?
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seddon,
Yep.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
Let's move on to COA 22-18. And do we have the petitioner with us on this one?
Give me 1 second.
No problem.
If the petitioner for 1000 East Atwater Avenue is present, can you please raise your hand via Zoom? I believe they might be here, but it's hard for me to navigate Zoom participant names.
Did you say they're there?
Okay.
Gloria, do you see
I have
John's
I have
iPhone?
a raised hand. Okay, excellent.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so for certificate of appropriateness 22-18 for 1000 East Atwater Avenue, located in the Elm Heights Historic District, the petitioner, John Bierman, is requesting for full window replacement. So staff looked at the guidelines for the Elm Heights Historic District and at the comments from their neighborhood construction subcommittee, and does not recommend approval for 22-18. That said, the issue with historic windows is that once you replace them, they're gone. And even though I'm going to show you the replacement options, which are in form and style pretty similar in the general geometry, but staff does encourage the owners to restore them and to replace the storm windows that they used to have, and look at technologies that are more current, but working on restoring the windows instead. They do need love and care. And if the last thing that staff wants to comment is that if replacement is absolutely necessary, a very detailed condition survey of each individual window would be required. And in that case, staff would also recommend site visits from commissioners. And with that said, here's the Elm Heights Construction Subcommittee comments. I am going to leave them up for about a minute because this is there's a lot here. So they have no problems with the windows on the addition to the rear of the house being replaced. However, the windows on the original structure are integral to the style and the story of the house. The numerous lights and wooden muntin styles and rails give the house its character. So, yeah, with that, I'm going to leave it to the commissioners.
Thank you, Gloria. So let's move to questions. And let's start with Daniel.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Sam, do you have any questions?
I guess my only question is, I see a bunch of different windows, but I don't see which windows belong to which openings, so it's difficult for the commission to determine if you're maintaining the operation and size and number of lights and all that stuff. So could the petitioner talk to that?
Yes, hi, thank you. The plan would be to keep all window openings the same size, dimensions, everything as close to original as possible.
Sorry,
Functionality as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So Matthew?
I'm just looking at the guidelines again, and it says if original windows, doors, and hardware can be restored and reused, they should not be replaced. So can you elaborate on why they can't be restored or reused?
Sure, they have been restored multiple times over the past few years, and we are looking for something just a little more durable. And the condition that they're in and that they're deteriorating over the time because of all the wear and tear they've had. So the objective is to just get something in there that will look historically accurate, but last a lot longer.
I have no questions. Allison?
Yes. I kind of forgot my question. It's been a long day, so give me a second. Oh my goodness. I had a deer today, so a buck, so let's see. My question was regarding, the cost. I assume that there's a cost difference between restoration and replacement. Could someone address that, please?
That is a fantastic question, and I honestly don't have an answer for that. The restoration, as far as a full restoration, I would have to dig into that. Have not even, I know we spend several thousand each year just maintaining and fixing any time the pane breaks or anything to that respect.
A follow-up, is that appropriate? Do you have a quote for these windows here?
For the new replacement windows?
New windows, yeah.
Yes, and I want to say it was in the range of 25,000, give or take.
Thank you.
Sure.
Duncan?
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
No questions.
Ernesto, questions?
Yes, I have a question for the petitioner. If you were to replace those windows, what type of windows were quoted? Are these comparable to the existing windows in terms of wood, cladding, aluminum? What are we talking about here?
We have two different options. The one that I sent in is a vinyl wrapped wood window that would give the similar appearance to what's in there. I also have a quote for wood windows that would also look the same. The end result is there was about a $5,000, $6,000 difference between them, with the ones that I'm presenting being on the cheaper end. But the appearance was, I couldn't tell much of a difference.
Follow up? One more question. Did you have an assessment of the condition of the windows by a professional or, somebody who, repairs historic windows?
Tommy Dees and Brawley Property Group both have looked at them and have recommended replacement.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Ernesto. So let's move on to comments. And let's start.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
It's okay. I thought I read that those had muttons in between the glass, one of the proposed replacements. Is that right?
Possibly, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
That's correct, Chris.
Okay. And I would just answer that repairing them costs less than new ones.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Chris. Let's move on to comments.
Well, what I see is that the original windows can be restored and reused as they have been before, and that probably adding the storms, appropriate storms would cut down on the frequency of repairs. And the district is not in favor of this. So at the moment, I'm not in favor of this either.
Thank you, Matthew. Daniel?
There we are. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Matthew had said. I agree with both recommendations being against it. I think that speaks pretty loudly.
Thank you. And Sam?
I think the guidelines for Elm Heights are very clear that you need to repair windows before you replace them. That said, there are a couple of windows on here that the neighborhood did point out that are not original windows, which I feel could be replaced. However, if you're replacing a window, I don't think it applies to the windows that you actually can replace. Well, I think this commission would approve replacing. The muttons inside the glass don't fly. You're going to have to get as historically accurate as possible. You want applied muttons on both sides of glass with a shadow bar in between. It's good that you're using wood windows, so we appreciate that. But you're going to have to spell out what windows you're going to replace, what the replacements are. And if you want to make a case for replacing any original windows, you're going to have to document those windows extensively before we'd even consider replacement.
Okay.
So I cannot approve this one as it stands. But there are, I believe, a couple of windows, especially on the rear of the house, that if you want to come back, we would consider.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Allison?
Yeah, I'm actually inclined to approve this. It does appear that the petitioner has multiple times tried to repair these, and it's costing them, thousands of dollars each year. Not to mention that the photographs of the windows look almost identical. It sounds like the material is going to be appropriate. So, I think that it sounds like this petitioner is kind of exhausted from repairing these windows year after year. We just looked at another project that improved the efficiency of a home, and I would assume that new windows would create that effect as well. So I will be voting yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Duncan, comments?
Well, the normal standard is to have a window survey to document the condition. And Secretary standards call for 60% of the window being unrepairable. That's the general standard. And would single pane windows with a decent storm window are more efficient than new windows as presented.
Thank you, Duncan. Ernesto, comments?
Yes, I agree with the staff recommendation. That's all.
Thank you. And Chris, comments? Chris?
You're muted.
Okay, I'm going to agree with my commissioners here about these windows. Preferably, I'd like to see them restored and like to see storms put in. Probably a lot more efficient than the newer windows. That's my comments. Did Chris come back? Okay.
Oh, I commented, but I was muted. Let's see, did anyone, no one heard my comment, I guess. I said the windows are approaching 100 years old and they need to be maintained, and they've been maintained over the years, and here's an owner that doesn't want to continue that maintenance of these windows, which could last, if you maintain them, another 100 years. So the replacement windows won't last that long. So I support staff.
Thank you, Chris. So I need a motion.
I'll move to deny.
Second.
D?
Okay, Daniel Slagle.
I just want to, if I say yes, I'm agreeing with the motion. Okay, I just wanted to be clear, yes.
Okay. Sam DeSaller.
Yes.
Matthew Seddon.
Yes.
John Saunders.
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Let's move on to COA 22-19. Is the petitioner with us?
Can the petitioner please raise their hand via Zoom? Okay, excellent. Thank you. They are here. So this project, COA 22-19, for an addition at 208 East 16th Street in the Garden Hill Historic District. Different iterations of the project have already come before the commission last year. Lisa Freeman, the owner, has been working with the neighborhood building construction subcommittee since then, and they've gone through various revisions and versions until the community and the owner found a solution that worked for both of them. The the new proposal does change the facade in vastly. This is how it looks right now. Some commissioners actually visited this site last year at one point, and the building is a bit of a hodgepodge inside and out. It's been through it's had some personal history of change. It's located very much to the back of the lot, which makes it very difficult for expansion towards the back, impossible actually, so it can only expand towards the front and upwards. That said, the owner and their designer worked on creating a facade that would be very different from the current facade, but would be in keeping with the guidelines for the neighborhood historic district, and the neighborhood construction subcommittee approved of these changes. So here's their quote: the Garden Hill Neighborhood Association has reviewed this application for a COA. We are pleased to recommend the project for approval. We believe the new home will be a significant asset to the community here. Thank you kindly for your consideration. And staff recommends approval for COA 22-19.
Thank you, Gloria. Let's do questions. We'll start with Allison.
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay. Daniel?
No questions.
Sam?
No questions.
Matthew?
No questions.
Yeah, I have no questions regarding this. Duncan?
And I had a little difficulty reading the plan. Is there a second story being added as well?
A half story dormer.
A half-story dormer. Is that over the whole house?
No, just the front.
Okay.
To the front portion.
I understand it now. Thank you.
Ernesto? Any questions, Ernesto?
All right, I thought I said no questions, sorry.
Thank you. Chris,
No questions.
questions?
I had a question about parking, but it looked like when I drove by, and it looks like on the plan that there are 2 parkings off that alley. Is that garage part of the parking?
So the existing garage will remain, and then we're just adding the 2 gravel spots as you see there in front of the garage. So there's adding that retainer wall and just extending that gravel.
Right. What height is that retaining wall?
Approximately 40 inches.
Oh, okay, I see. And then the rest of the parking will be on street in front of the
Exactly.
place.
Street parking, which is permitted.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Let's move on to comments. Let's start with Allison.
I have no comments, thank you.
Daniel?
No comments.
Sam?
I think this is a great improvement over the last iteration that we saw, and provided that the plans, well, actually, the fenestration is per the elevations and not the plans, and that staff has the opportunity to review anything that changes the exterior because of the permitting process. I strongly stand behind this one.
Thank you. And I have no comments. I think it's a good project. Duncan, comments?
Yeah, I mean, normally when I see an addition alter the original intention of the design so drastically, I'm kind of automatically against it. But I can see, I know that they've worked hard on it. As Sam said, this is a very big improvement over the previous one. And I'm not sure what else one could do here. It's very, very difficult to put these kinds of additions on this structure. And as staff pointed out, the structure's been pretty well muddled over time. I don't think we're looking at anything like its original configuration. So I would support this.
Thank you, Duncan. Ernesto?
Yes, I agree with Duncan. I don't think there is much left of the original house. So it's a major improvement to what is being shown tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I'm a little sorry about the vinyl siding. I think cement board siding would be a better fit, but I think what's really interesting is they've illustrated through this process the reforms that we've been discussing with having the petitioner meet with the neighborhood up front and sparing all the pain of coming to 2 different petitions that had to be rejected because of a failure to really work through the process with the neighborhood and the guidelines. And what's coming out of this is a much better process, much better project with a poor process. And I think it illustrates the need for our process reform. And I'm still sorry about vinyl, but that's just me. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I need a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right.
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's
Great,
move
thank
on.
you.
You're welcome. Let's move on to COA 22-20, 916 South Morton Street, and I see the petitioner is present. Thank you. All right, Gloria.
Excellent. So, give me 1 second. I need to. Okay, so the petitioner, sorry, it's like, oh, wrong picture. Sorry, wrong picture for the house. Envision a bungalow in McDowell Gardens instead of a ranch in Garden Hill. Sorry. So the petitioner, I'm just going to skip to the plans. The petitioner and the owners are requesting for an addition to the house, this house in McDowell Gardens. This is part of a long-term chain of projects that started with a garage and then with working the front facade, and now the final phase, I believe this is the final phase, you can correct me, is the addition of a room to the side. As staff, I originally had some concerns regarding the shape and the geometry of the building. However, meeting with the petitioner and the owners and seeing just how far back this addition would be, and the fact that the McDowell Gardens Neighborhood Association supports this project, and that the house is actually absolutely tiny. I actually went and did a site visit, and half the house is basically the bedroom right now. So the addition is actually barely visible from the street because this house is on a hill. This area of Morton Street, the houses are, I would say, about between 8 and 10 feet above the ground. So it's quite leveled up, and then it's very, it's towards the back, and the architecture for the new area, the design and the exterior are compatible with the house. And having taken all of this into careful consideration, although as staff, and I did as staff ask for a change in material, and so I'm seeing that there is a bit of a sort of something that separates them with the paneling between the two parts. This has been done with a lot of care. Here's the neighborhood association comments. The McDowell Executive Committee is in transition at the moment, but we have a quorum in support for the proposed addition to the Pools Bungalow next to Cardinal Spirits at South Morton. We have complete faith in Barry Clapper. We love her work. So, so that said, staff does recommend approval for COA 22-19. Please disregard Lisa Freeman's house on this image.
Thank you, Gloria. Let's go to questions. Daniel, do you have questions?
No, nothing at this time.
All right, thank you. Sam?
Are you going to make this red to match the house next door? You're going to paint it red to match the house next door? Good, thank you.
Matthew?
No question.
Allison?
No questions, thank you.
And I don't have any questions at this point. Have I got everybody? Yes, all right. Duncan, questions?
The front porch is being extended, is that right? As part of the same project?
Correct.
And can you tell me how much farther it's coming out?
4 feet for about 2/3 of the width.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Ernesto?
I just have a question regarding the garage. What was the determination for the height of the garage? I see that it's a little bit taller than the actual main structure.
I'm happy
I
to
think that's
answer.
it's already been approved.
I understand, I'm just curious.
It is about, I think it was about 5 feet taller than the ridge of the original house. There is a storage space above the garage. And it is
Oh, so it's
slightly
part
elevated. It's slightly elevated so that it can match the floor elevation of the original house. So the owners can age in place, they can drive into the garage and then exit from their vehicles and go straight into the house.
I see.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chris?
Yeah, I missed the explanation of the change in the transition material. What was that comment?
Yes.
Front elevation, I guess.
Yeah, so I had, when we met just before Barry submitted, and as staff, I don't know, I wanted the sort of the addition to be a little bit more separate from the house, or to feel like it wasn't overpowering or overwhelming or eating at the geometry of the. I wanted the bungalow to read as a standalone, bungalow, and not as not as a horizontal large house. And so there's many things to be taken into account. It's actually farther back than it looks in elevation, tricks the eye. And there's this subtle change in the connector area. There's a change in the cladding that just allows it to read a little differently. So sometimes those subtle details help. That was my point of view on it. I hope that clarifies what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I didn't understand, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we'll do comments. Daniel? Comments?
No comments at this time.
Sam?
It's been fun to watch the accretional growth of this structure at a sort of exponential rate. It's like watching it, one of those fast motion films. But I think the petitioner has done a nice job articulating the new versus the old, and letting the main house still maintain its, primacy over both the garage and the addition. And it's almost becoming a small compound at this point. So I really, this one's fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Matthew?
No comments.
Allison?
No comment, thank you.
My only comment is I think it's a great project and appreciate all the work that's been done to make this what it is. Duncan, do you have any comments?
No.
Ernesto, comments?
Yes, just want to say I think it looks great. I love the idea of the separation of their primary bedroom with the rest of the house and allowing them to age in place. I think that's really great. I'm really looking forward to see this completion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chris?
Yeah, it's another good example of interaction of an owner and an architect and a historic designation that brings about a much better project. So everybody wins. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a motion.
I'll move to approve COA 22-20.
Second.
Great. Dee?
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seddon,
Yep.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Okay. New business.
Hi. Yeah. Let me unmute myself. So I included as staff in the packet a memorandum of agreement for the an INDOT project at 10th Street and Pete Ellis Drive that impacts the Hinklegarten Farmstead. Sorry, and I'm bringing this more for your information and to update everybody because the Historic Preservation Commission should have been part of this memorandum of agreement. However, this occurred, all the information was sent out and the petition for our information was sent out between the time Connor left and I arrived, so there was sort of a void in staff. That said, I'm getting looped in with with the goings-on and the interagency and departmental meetings that are happening, this project has been pushed back a bit in its timeline. There's still some things and decisions that are in development. I believe Steve White is here. BRI was included in a memorandum of agreement pursuant to Section 106, and everything that involves, I'm trying to remember the CFR, but it's not coming up at the moment. That said, they have been in contact with BRI and are doing a lot of mitigation to avoid impacting the site, the Hinkle Garten Farmstead. In the end, there's going to be a path that runs by the road. It's going to be either a multi-use or a sidewalk. So there's going to be a path there. There's a lot of stuff still going on. It's going well. At some point, it will come to us as a C of A. That's still a little bit in the future, but I did want to inform all of you. And by law, we are a certified local government, and your voice is important and legally prescribed in this type of case. So yeah, just letting you know what's going on with this project. It's all looking good so far. I believe he is.
Steve, are you with us?
Yes.
Do you have any additional comments or to address?
Just that I hope that, we worked pretty closely with the state and their consultants to come up with a design that minimizes the impact on the farmstead. And I hope if there are changes to it, that they don't cause problems. But anyway, so far so good.
All right, thank you, Steve. So we move on to old business?
Yes.
And that would be the Johnson Creamery nomination.
Yes. Can the owners and representatives of the Johnson Creamery and the Smokestack raise your hands via Zoom so that I can include you in the conversation, please? Okay, give me 1 second. Excellent. Let me see if there's anybody else. Okay. So I have included in the packets a staff report for the Johnson Creamery. It is a bit extensive. Did I echo? Okay. It is a bit extensive, therefore I'm not going to read the entirety of it here. However, upon doing historical research and review, staff has found that the creamery exemplifies the cultural, political, economic, social, I would say, and historic heritage of the community. Not just by the creamery being one of Bloomington's top industrial centers, at one point number 4, only after the stonemasonry, furniture, and university, well, you could call it academic industry. So at one point, they hired up to 100 people, but they also fed most of Bloomington. So you can see the whole history. There's echo. Through the history of the creamery, you can see the history of Bloomington's foodways from farm to table, local industry. So a lot of the products, whether it was milk, whether it was fruits, whether it was water, were all locally sourced, and therefore this helped the farmers and was really part of Bloomington's economy in that regard. But the creamery also supplied the area with many of its dairy products for 75 years. And for a long time, it also represented the whole history of the creamery and industry in the United States. It's a little bit of a microcosm, having home delivery up until the 50s or 60s. They used horse-drawn carts until 1939, so they started phasing out in 1938, but they continued using motorized vehicles for a time. And just like that rest of that industrial history and food production history, the creamery also ended up closing when milk and other products were being sort of consolidated into these multi-state industries and large supermarket chains. And like other industrial structures, the creamery was eventually rehabilitated, just like the building we are in right now, to a space that offers office space and other similar types of services. As staff, I also looked at the architectural components. Owing to its unique location or physical characteristics, represents an established and familiar visual feature of the city. We will talk about the smokestack in a minute. Put a pin on that. But that said, it is currently one of Bloomington's most tallest, but also most iconic structures, both the factory, the former factory, and the smokestack. The factory itself, the historic creamery, has a very interesting and different layout from many other buildings because it also traces, as all these technologies and dairy production were changing, the building itself traces the history of technology as things had to be changed. So when people changed ice boxes to refrigerators, you didn't need a giant ice container that would hold all the ice they were going to sell that year in one single place. And so you see that the building does have a bit of a Frankenstein aspect to it, or a assemblage aspect to it, but that is because the building on the exterior and the interior reflects all of these changes over time. It also reflects the geometry of having the railroad tracks right by it, so it's got that, it's not a rectangular site at all. And the smokestack, which has the word Johnson on it, is also a very important aspect of this conversation. Yeah, so basically in my description right now, I also incorporate a G, exemplifies the built environment in an era of history characterized by a distinctive architectural style. So basically, it shows the growth and the changes that came in through the 20th century industrial architecture. And yeah, so the packet has much more information. I tried to summarize it as much as I could. So here are some images courtesy of the Monroe County History Center, citing sources. This photograph is, although undated, is probably from some point before 1939. As you can still see the horse-drawn carts, and in the background you can see the original smokestack, which was considerably taller than the current one. Here are some more images. I'm going to go back to the map because that's something that also needs to be talked about. So this is the, sorry, I'm trying to think of. So this is the southern facade, the main facade, and the northern facade, where you can see the Art Deco three-story structure that used to house ice, I believe, and the different views of the smokestack. And one of the very important components of drawing maps and determining what parts are going to be prioritized for protection. So this map was drawn in order to take into consideration the existing components of the building. However, part of the small structure There's some things that still need a little tweaking, and I believe Peerless, you contacted the city with some questions about this. So this is a good time to talk about the boundaries and where they should be set. And that's pretty much my presentation where it's at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. So we're going to hear from Peerless now. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Michael Cordero. I'm the founder and owner of Peerless Development. Thanks everybody for your time today. Our purpose for coming today, as we thought, but didn't really get put on the agenda, was really to discuss the smokestack, the condition of the smokestack, and Hans repair order that was issued to us a couple of months ago. Since that time, we did hire RC engineers to do a new structural report on the condition of the smokestack and give recommendation on what should be done. So we do want to sort of touch on that today, and hopefully we can try to come to some resolution there. And really, what we would be seeking would be a partial demolition according to RC's recommendation down to 60 feet, and then restoring and repairing the rest of the smokestack. And I think, and with that would also come the demolition of the little shed, which was really added on as an equipment room for AT&T's cellular equipment. So part of the demolition would be that, and I think that sort of answers one of the questions that Gloria brought up regarding the boundary of the potential historical designation. The other part we would like to talk about is that boundary. We would, I guess, going back, if we were given certificate of appropriateness for the demolition down to 60 feet, I think Peerless, as the owners of this building, would be happy to comply and go along with an HPC recommendation to mark this, the office building and the rest of the stack as a local designated property. The other thing we would like to adjust is to have the boundaries of that more closely follow the foundation of the building, so that we know we're developing on the north parking lot, an apartment building, and there will have a shared easement driveway between the two properties. So we want to be able to do repairs. We're going to be tearing up and re-pouring the foundation and the sort of parking spots that you can see in that image right there. We didn't know if like ground repair, driveway repair, we don't know, I guess, maybe we can ask right now if that falls under the purview of the HPC, and if we would have to come back, every time we needed to do landscaping or repairs to the parking lot or sidewalks. We'd like to get that question answered. So at the very least, we'd like to exclude the potential easement area, but really we'd like it to probably exclude the entire parking lot.
Thank you. So we're going to do commissioner comments now? Okay. Yeah, let's move to commissioner comments on this, because we're going to move this to city council, and we'll make that decision this evening to forward it on. Okay, great. Thank you, Gloria.
Wait, legal has a comment.
Yes.
Sorry, just kind of I guess a procedural point. There are a couple of things. One, tonight is the opportunity for public comment on the question of designation, so we need to have an opportunity for that. And certainly also then the standard question and comment period. But I just wanted to interject that we do need a public comment portion of this as well.
Okay. So let's do public comment now. And Gloria, you have the Zoom. Do we have comments from the public at this point?
I'm going to ask hold up. So the people who have their hands raised, can you lower them? And if you have unless you have a comment right now, as part of the public? Okay, so yes, there is a person who wants to speak, Karen Duffy.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm here as a member of the executive board for the Near West Side Neighborhood Association. I have a letter from the executive board, which consists of 7 people, the officers and 3 representatives at large. I'm one of the representatives at large, but our president, Peter Dorfman, couldn't attend. So I'm reading it for him and for the whole board. Dear commissioners, the executive board of the Near West Side Neighborhood Association fully supports the nomination of Johnson's Creamery as an historic district. With our border located just a block west of the property, our neighborhood enjoys special historic ties with the creamery. Many of our houses were home to creamery workers. Preparing the nomination for our own recently designated conservation district has raised our awareness of these ties and likewise heightened our awareness of the creamery's larger significance as an early industry in the city of Bloomington. Furthermore, like many others in Bloomington today, we recognize the creamery building with its iconic smokestack as a landmark of our community. Its unique architectural character is one we value and want to see protected by historic district status for Bloomingtonians of the future to enjoy. Finally, we deeply appreciate the efforts of the commission and staff to move this nomination forward. Sincerely, the Near West Side Neighborhood Association Executive Board. And I have the names, and I can send this to you, Gloria, if you'd like it.
Thank you. Yes, please do.
Yes, please.
There are 2 more people with their hands raised. I'm going to ask Peter to unmute. Thank you, Karen.
Yes, hi, Peter Dorfman. I did actually manage to make it to the meeting. I want to reinforce everything that Karen just said as one of the signatories of that letter. And I just wanted to add a personal note to that. I haven't been in Bloomington as long as Karen has, or some of the other people on the board of the Near West Side Neighborhood Association. But I view that smokestack as a true landmark representative of Bloomington. I believe that smokestack is to Bloomington what the arch is to St. Louis. And I, on a personal basis, I haven't vetted this with the rest of the board of the association, but I strongly oppose the reduction of the height of that. I believe that there are practical ways to shore up that smokestack at its current height. I would hate to see it reduced. And I'm opposed to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We have one more person, Janice Sorby. Oh, and yeah, and after that, Mike Cordaro.
Jan?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jan Sorby, and when I found out that this was going to be reviewed tonight, I was kind of surprised because there are a multitude of reasons, but there are very few industrial buildings left in Bloomington. Many, many of them have been razed. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing like this left at all. It makes it really an anomaly and very precious to most people in Bloomington. It's our skyline. This is what we see. This is also acts as a wayfarer sign. You know, you're in Bloomington, you look up and you can find where you are in relationship to this area. So it acts as more of a defining character of Bloomington than many buildings around today. And I'd like to add my personal idea too. If you cut this down, it's going to lose all of its beautiful elegance. It's going to become short and stubby. And for these reasons, again, with the historic importance of this industrial building, I really support the neighborhood association's point of view, and please do not let this be reduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
And finally, we have Mike Cordaro, owner, wants to speak.
I just want to say we'd be happy to sell it to the city of Bloomington for $1. And please keep it up as a part of a landmark skyline structure. No private person owns the Arc in St. Louis. So happy to donate it to the city.
Thank you. Any more public comments?
Unless somebody in the hall want to speak?
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Council, lifelong Bloomingtonian and a member of the hand department here in Bloomington, but that's beside the point. I agree with what everybody said as far as Bloomingtonians go. This is a landmark in our city. You drive into town, you see it. And as a kid, I grew up going to Fairview School, walking past it every day to go down to the public library. It's a big deal. And to have somebody who is not from Bloomington come in and chop it off with no care or no, I don't even have a word for it. It's frustrating, and I think it's wrong to take a Bloomington icon and a Bloomington landmark and just chop it off to 60 feet. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. This is Daniel Dixon with the legal department. I did just want to, make another procedural note. Tonight, we are really just on the question of whether or not the commission wants to make a recommendation to the city council that this map be approved. We're not deciding anything about the height. If that map is sent to city council and the city council adopts an ordinance placing this under protection, then a certificate of appropriateness would be the process by which that issue would be debated. There were materials in the packet tonight, obviously, just to provide some context to the structural integrity of that, but that is to distinguish that process from kind of the narrow issue for this body for this evening.
Thank you, Daniel. So I still want to move on to commissioner comments about this. Duncan?
We're having comments?
We are having comments. And this
on
is to move the project.
On the nomination?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I favor the nomination. I favor making this a local historic district. I'm a little concerned about the map of the boundary, and I know Gloria said that that's somewhat unresolved, but I wanted to point out that plans for an apartment building notwithstanding, the National Register nomination covers the entire parking lot all the way to 8th Street. And so the National Register property for the Johnson Creamery building includes the parking lot. And the reason that it does that is that's where all of the cooling equipment was stationed in the original building. And that's the original site plot. Now I know there are extenuating circumstances since we have a new owner who is planning to fill that parking lot with another building. But my comment, I guess, is that I'm not sure what happens to the viability of the National Register nomination if you change the boundary. I don't know exactly what the process is at the National Register to how that would be determined, whether they would, I guess there would have to be an amendment to the National Register nomination to change the boundary. But that's something we don't really have the answer to yet. So I'm a little bit concerned about, I understand what the extenuating circumstances are and why the owner wants that boundary to be as close to the building as possible, but that somewhat complicates the nomination, and we can't vote to move the nomination forward in a definitive way until we know exactly what the boundary is going to be, because we need to have a boundary. So I'm not sure when we have that discussion, Daniel Dixon, but it seems like that's the outstanding issue here. It seems like there's, I mean, you should hear from the rest of the commissioners, but I think there will be general support for the nomination.
Duncan, this is Daniel. You know, that question could be answered tonight. There is, and I don't know if Gloria, if you can put that picture on the screen. Certainly, you know, that line is there. If the commissioners wanted to adjust or do something else, there could be a motion to do that or redraw or something else. But that could be discussed tonight as well.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, let's move on to Ernesto, if you have comments, and then we'll get to the property lines.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I support the nomination. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I support. I think Duncan could suggest an amendment that might be appropriate. And my comment is our job is to declare whether we think this is an historic property worthy of designation. That is our role. And I think it's clear that it is.
Thank you, Chris. So let's move on to Allison.
I just want to make sure that I understand. Tonight, we're discussing whether or not we should forward this to the city council.
Correct.
So that they can determine that it's historic. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We recommend it to city council, and they will then make the decision to designate it as a historic site.
Okay, and that is what we will be voting on today?
Yeah, that would be our recommendation, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Matthew, do you have any comments?
Well, and just to clarify, when we send it to the council, we send it with a boundary, or does the council make the determination?
And from my understanding with Daniel is that we will send it with the boundary that we will determine.
All right, well then, my comment is that I think the petitioner's request to have the boundary match the footprint of the building, plus I would say the smokestack, maybe not the little shed. I think that's very reasonable. I understand what my esteemed colleague Duncan is saying about the National Register boundary extending into the parking lot, and the reason for that being that there used to be stuff there, but as there is no stuff there anymore, it doesn't bother me too much, and I don't think it would affect the National Register nomination. So if a federal action wanted to have an impact on that property, it would be then the National Register designation, the boundary there. So we would simply be determining what could be done within the city. So I don't think it would, do much there. I mean, I can imagine that there won't be a federal action having to do with that parking lot, but I'm not concerned about it because there isn't anything there. I mean, I understand the worry, but it's a parking lot. So that's my only comment. I would say that we should put the boundary at the footprint of the building.
Thank you. Allison?
I apologize. I do need to ask one other question. I think this is for legal. Can the city council revise the boundary?
I believe they have the authority to do that by a motion or amendment.
So in that case, I would leave it as is and let the council debate that into the wee hours of the night.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. Sam?
I think Duncan makes a salient point that the boundary should be the same But I do have some sympathy with the petitioner that they want to develop the northern portion of that site. So I think regardless of what we do, we should be forwarding it with the same boundary.
Thank you, Sam. Daniel?
I don't think I have anything that has already been covered, so no comments.
Thank you. I don't have any additional comments on what my fellow commissioners have made. So
could I clarify myself a minute? This is Duncan. Could I clarify my comment?
Yes, Duncan.
My point was that I don't think it's important that the local designation and the National Register nomination have the same boundary necessarily. I'm just saying that I was kind of tipping off the owner that they're going to build a building inside a National Register boundary. And that means that they will be liable for federal endeavors, 106 review on anything that involves federal endeavors, including federal licensing, which covers most communication these days. So what I don't know is what action the National Register would take once they were alerted to the fact that the local designation only encompasses, let's say, the building footprint. I'm sure they don't want to have a National Register listing that is basically half parking lot, as long as when it's not associated with the building anymore. So it's just a complicating factor. I'm not, could call the National Park Service and find out what they would do about it. But my guess is they would vacate the National Register nomination part that includes the parking lot, and they would change their own footprint. That's my guess about what would happen. But I've just never had to administer that particular problem before. But I don't think the owner is probably going to want to build a building inside a National Register nomination property until that's settled. So, and that said, I'm pretty much okay with just doing the footprint of the building. Although if you'll notice in the lower southeast corner, it includes some vacant land that comes out to the street. So it ought to include the sidewalk, at least on the south side, and maybe half of the alley, and then follow the foundation footprint at the back. I think and also in terms of what Allison was proposing, it's better not to let the city council try to make a determination about the historic significance of the boundary. That's not their bailiwick. They want to know what we want to know. And normally when we forward something to them, we give them the boundary that we recommend, and then it's theirs to change. We don't just tell them they have to decide. So there's just some areas up in the air here that I'm just, that aren't resolved.
Okay, Mr. Patrick.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to see if I could kind of ask a question relative to the boundary that we're discussing right now. For us, at least, it was a little unclear. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Joe Patrick, and I'm with Peerless Development. I'm the director of development there. It was a little bit unclear to us exactly where the boundary line came from. Which, I don't know if it was arbitrary to a certain degree, but that was kind of what prompted our request to say, look, if we're having this whole discussion about the building and knowing that the city council has already reviewed and actually approved the new development that is going to, likely to occur on the northern portion of the property. And as part of that review that they've approved, it included taking out and refurbishing the paving and some of the sidewalks and curbs and things along those lines that are just north of the existing building. We're trying to understand exactly how that connection between this boundary line, the new development, and the existing building came about. And I don't know if somebody might be able to help clarify that for the group.
I can clarify how the original National Register boundary was drawn. It was just the property line.
Right, that makes sense. But so this orange boundary here doesn't match the boundary line of the property. So that's why I'm trying to, that's why I was trying to figure out where, this division line that kind of cuts through, and I know it's, tough on an image like this, but it kind of cuts through the utility shed there that we're talking, the equipment shed. It kind of cuts through the smokestack, and kind of just right through the middle of the parking lot. So I don't know where that, came from or what drove it to be at that location, which is, again, what prompted our request to try to have it follow the outline of the building a little more, since that's what at least in our mind, was part of the local historic designation element, was really the building, not so much the paving and the sidewalk.
Joseph, can I respond? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I can respond to that. And so backtracking a little, we started by looking at the original boundaries of the National Register of Historic Places, which is the entire lot. So that was taken into consideration, but the fact that there is already an approved project for the parking lot and having the whole place and the whole lot in a nomination process would be very complicated. That sort of led to what seems like a very arbitrary division. To clarify, most historic sites or districts, so here in Bloomington we call individual building landmarks single structure historic districts as well. They usually include the entire lot. So changes to fencing, changes to sidewalks, and to other components of the sites are often looked at. However, that is not the exclusive boundary. In accordance and agreement with the owners, the boundary can be the walls of the building itself. So there are various options. There is some flexibility to this. And the reality is that we want to work with in good faith with you and understand that this is an extraordinarily complicated lot in many ways. So this is the time for you as the owners, as Peerless, and the commission to decide what works best for the lot, works best for everybody, and sort of find a medium, a compromise that could work for the protection of the building, but also ensure that some of the Peerless's your goals are also met. So that was kind of the arbitrariness of this these lines. However, it doesn't have to remain at this line. It can be determined right now that the building footprint itself is the historic district. But it's very normal and very typical in Bloomington for single building historic districts to include the entirety of the lot. So the grounds are also considered historic as well. So it could go either way. It's a matter of having this conversation we're having right now. Did that help clarify your doubts?
It did, and that's exactly what we were hoping for, which is why we're going to put forth the request, if we could, to the group to adjust it, especially the north boundary, because just to reiterate a little bit, as part of the planned development on the northern half of the site, we will be, for instance, there's an existing transformer that's just north of the existing building, and we're going to be obviously tying into that with some of the new electrical work. We're going to be reworking some of the curbs in the back there. We'll be, reworking some of the paving and the striping. So those, they may seem like minor items, but from our intent, it would be really much easier and much, I think, more beneficial for us, certainly as the owner, to not have to come back to the Historic Preservation Council for a special certificate of appropriateness to move a curb or to tie in with an electrical transformer. So that area is really, I think, the biggest area that we are hoping to have the outline follow the profile of the building a little closer. The southern edge along 7th Avenue, and somebody had mentioned half of the alley. I don't think we have any really particular opinion one way or another, however you guys would normally do it. But that area where we already know we're going to be proposing to do some work related to the new development would be really beneficial to us to kind of have that follow the outline of the building along the northern edge there.
Thank you. Should we now discuss the actual outline that is presented to us now, modify it, or leave it as it is, or move it closer?
My concern is that we may have left something on the table, which is whether or not to forward it to the
Right, so
council.
I think what we're discussing
Right.
at this point, if we forward it to the council with the modification to the lot line.
So we'll table this and move on to that discussion and go back to it.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Well, I would propose we make the boundary the footprint of the building, and as long as that also includes the footprint of the smokestack. And I think I appreciate Duncan's clarification, and that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, the petitioner has been advised about the National Register boundary, and yeah, if they want a federal permit or funding or something like that, the 106 will kick in and they'll have to deal with that. But for us, for what I see, I think the pertinent area is the footprint of the building. So I would suggest that we forward it to the council based on the footprint of the building.
So the only thing I see that complicates that on the north side
Who's speaking?
is there's a lot of access geometry. There are walkways, there are stairs, there are approaches that are rightfully associated with the Johnson Creamery building and not associated with anything north of it. So I would say not the footprint of the building, but the outline of those sidewalks and curbs that address the building. And I hate to say it, but including the electrical terminal there, because that was put in there in full service of the Johnson Creamery building itself. That is actually part of the property. So, you know, I think you're going to have to include the sidewalks and walkways in the rear, as well as you say, some reasonable area around the smokestack. I guess I would, in terms of the city council, I would prefer to send them a map that we considered the best map in our purview and let them approve it or disapprove it. Or then if they want to change it for some reason, somebody can petition them to do that.
Thank you, Duncan. Sam?
It almost feels like we're going to have to walk the site with the owner and with a spray can or something, but we're going to have to get some kind of on-site visual agreement for that boundary that we can bring to another meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think the footprint of the building is the right way to do it.
Thank you, Duncan. Sam?
Given Duncan's familiarity with the building and the this application for National Registry and all that, I was going to propose that we table this until he's had a chance to basically do what he just said, is walk the site with the owner and Gloria and come up with a modified boundary that encompasses as tightly as possible those elements of the creamery, both interior and exterior, that are salient and historic and salvageable, and that we just table this until that's done.
I'm sorry, Sam.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Shall I make that a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
May staff make a comment?
Sorry?
May staff make a comment? I don't know what the appropriate time is on the motion. May I make a comment on the possible motion, or do we want to wait until it's been made?
Oh, he did.
I'm happy to withdraw the motion until we get comments from staff and anyone else, any public comment remaining.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the discussion of the commission. I do want to advise from staff and I think from the administration that we are under some sense of urgency here due to the safety of the smokestack, which is quite unsafe right now. If you saw the study, pardon me, in the packet, we have a trail closed with a beeline, and we are trying to get this secured as fast as possible. And I worry, quite frankly, that if we table this and don't determine a map tonight, some map that can be forwarded to the city council with designation, understanding the sort of conflict that we're in here, but I do worry about the public safety here. And so I would, to the extent staff can do this, urge the commission to act tonight to make a recommendation if you choose a recommendation, because we are under a gun here on public safety. So just want to put that out there. And I think the study, the engineering report that discusses the condition of the smokestack would hopefully reinforce that. So I appreciate you hearing the staff's comment, and I mean it absolutely respectfully, but I do want to just impress that sense of urgency we have tonight, if I may. So thank you.
I withdraw that motion because I do concur that public safety trumps.
Great.
Could we would there be a simple way to define the boundary as the footprint of the building plus sidewalk out to the street, and then along the back, the footprint of the building plus a 1 meter buffer, I guess, a yard buffer or something? Would that be acceptable? And that would probably capture some of Duncan's concerns about streetscape and related sorts of things.
Do the owners have comments on this, on this proposal?
I'm sorry?
I mean, I feel like we've got a good actor here, and I'd like to work with them and also balance the time of not have the smokestack fall on somebody. So if that would work, I will move that.
Okay. Then why don't we make the motion that we move this to City Council for designation? Daniel?
Sorry, there's a resolution. Do you have the resolutions with you?
Oh, I don't have it. Sorry, they're here.
What's the downside of using the proposed boundary that we've looked at first, that's defined and is on the table and has come from our staff?
Well, I think
I don't see a downside. I'm just
trying
trying to accommodate
too far.
the petitioner because
Does anybody have a copy?
trying to compromise and accommodate the petitioner because it seemed like a reasonable request.
I'll just jump in here again. I would make that north boundary just follow the configuration of the curb and public area associated with the creamery itself, across the back, and not a meter out, but just whatever that curb distance is. There's a fairly narrow sidewalk all the way to the entrance at the center of the building, and then there's a very wide apron that sweeps around and basically makes a beeline for the stack itself. And so it's a curved line, but it takes in all of the public space associated with the creamery before you get to the parking lot. And it's an easy line to follow. It's a curb.
That sounds good to me. I'd be happy to move that would be the boundary. Okay.
Hi. Our issue with that is that curb and that sidewalk and that configuration are all changing as part of the proposed and approved plans for the new development. That's why we're suggesting, I guess, a foot around the base of the foundation, or whatever, a yard of 3 feet around would probably work. And I think all of our changes will be outside of that. But the configuration of the sidewalk as it is today will not be 100% the same. And that's part of why we would like to just get it, adjusted today so that all of our modifications that we know are happening are outside of that, and future repairs fall outside of it. Additionally, we'd like to ask if we can get HPC, the member of the commission's feedback on the chimney and the smokestack, in light of the report that we have in our hands and the public safety concern and staff's, urgency to get this taken care of. We'd like to get sort of comments and feedback on our proposed plan of action, which would be to reduce the height to 60 feet.
We're not talking about the smokestack.
No.
No, that's not a part of this. That'll be, the smokestack is a different part that'll come later.
Well, this is an urgent matter of public safety.
Thank you. Great.
Does staff, based on all of this discussion on the boundary line, do you have a suggestion as to the boundary line?
So the issue with the boundary line is that what we're doing right now is negotiation that happens with many of these types of cases. Just trying to figure out what works best for the different parties involved, for the owners, and there's going to be some give and take. So in the end, the HPC has to decide which boundaries they're going to go with, and then send it to Common Council, and that's what's going to, that's what the Common Council is going to be looking at, and the owners also have a chance to voice their either support or contest it in different ways at Common Council as well. It's better if everybody's in agreement at this point as much as possible. So that's kind of where we're at. Sam? Sorry.
Thank you, Gloria.
I'll do it. I move that we send it in with this designated boundary, and if the proponent wants to talk to the council about reducing it, the council can reduce it. So having thought this through, I move we send it to the council as defined in the packet.
I would second that motion.
Not hearing.
You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Sorry. Today, the HPC Council declares that the property located at 700 West 7th meets the following criteria for local designation referred to in the staff report. A, has significant character, interest, or value as a part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the city, state, nation, or associated with the person who played a significant role, local, state, or national history, and the site is of historic. Two, the site is of an historic event, and three, it exemplifies the culture, political, economic, social, or historic heritage of the community. Consequently, the HPC recommends historic designation under Title 8 of the Bloomington Municipal Code to the Common Council with the attached map. Interim protection. The resolution to place interim protection on the property that has been sent to the Common Council with recommendation of local historic designation. Today, after a vote, the HPC recommends that the Common Council locally designates.
Get your attention. Legal.
These are two separate resolutions.
I'm sorry, you're right, Dan. You're right, Daniel. So I just want to make sure we didn't miss it because that happened to us in the past.
I want to clarify, there were two other points under the architectural subsection that Gloria indicated in the staff report that I don't think were included in your resolution.
Okay.
I can.
Here. Okay.
So you read this one, but then also these two.
Thank you, Daniel. So number one will be, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this. Okay, number one, exemplifies the cultural, political, economic, social, or historic heritage of the community. Two, owing to its unique location and physical characteristics, represented an establishment and familiar visual feature of the city, or 3, exemplifies the built environment in an area of history characterized by a distinctive architectural style. Consequently, the HPC recommends its historic designation under Title VIII.
So, did you read those two?
I did,
Okay.
yes. Title VIII of the Bloomington Municipal Code to the Common Council with the attached map. Okay. And the commission?
Second.
Thank you. Dee?
Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
I'll abstain.
Matthew Seddon,
Yes.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Second, interim protection. Resolution to place the interim protection on a property that has been sent to the Common Council with a recommendation of historic designation. Today, after a vote, the HPC recommends Common Council locally designate the property at 700 West 7th Street as historic and places the property under interim protection pending action by the Common Council under BMC 8.08.015. Good? Do we need a vote?
Okay.
Daniel, do we need a vote for this one too?
Yes.
All right. Dee?
Okay. Daniel Schlegel,
Yes.
Sam DeSaller,
Yes.
Matthew Seddon.
Yep.
John Saunders,
Yes.
Allison Chopra.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion
Okay. Motion carries? Good. All right. Thank you. So let's move on to commissioner comments.
I have some. Should I proceed?
Yes, Chris.
Okay, I remember that when this group first proposed their plans, they were planning to take the chimney down, and they had an art installation that was going to take the place of the chimney. And just a historic note that without any engineering report, the chimney was threatened, and I think it was not agreed to at that time, but it was some kind of lighted art structure that was as tall as this chimney, so they could keep the commitment to use the radio antenna or whatever. So just for the public record. And then over on 16th Street, I wonder how many people noticed that arts and crafts bungalow that's being demolished by neglect at 16th and Lincoln. It's one of the nicest houses in that area. It's got a hole in the roof. Weeds are growing up around it. I might request staff to investigate the ownership of that, and if there's any action we can take to help protect that house.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Do we have any public comments?
I'd like to speak again. We actually proposed that after we did have an engineering report, and it was apparent that the smokestack was continuing to deteriorate. So we weren't seeking to demolish. We came simply asking what everybody's thoughts were on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that fact. Thank you for clarifying it.
No problem.
John?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to express thanks to the commission, especially to Commissioner DeSaller. I didn't mean to interject in front of his motion. It's always hard to know the best time to interject as staff, and so I appreciate you all willing to hear me out on the urgency of the situation here. So thanks. Also, at the appropriate time, Daniel would like to talk through next steps here. So once this moves to the council and sort of our timeline that we might be on here, so whenever that's appropriate as well. Thank you.
Daniel?
Yeah, thank you. So As you know, this is sort of the very first step in a process for this property. The next step for this location will be to go to City Council for the question of the map and the ordinance that will be voted on as to whether to put this under protection as a local historic district. As has been talked about several times tonight, there is a rather pressing concern as it relates to the condition of the smokestack, and it's currently under, as has been referenced before, an unsafe order under Indiana code given its current condition and certain risks to public safety. And kind of in light of all of what's going on and that concern about public safety, there is a procedural mechanism that permits a petitioner to make a request for a certificate of appropriateness while the City Council is considering an actual map. And so that is something, a procedural mechanism that may come into place here, where as the commissioners, you may be seeing a certificate of appropriateness and being asked to consider some options as it relates to making this stack safe. That certificate of appropriateness would not be, if granted or otherwise, would not be effective unless City Council adopts an ordinance making it a local historic district. But that is a procedural mechanism that seems to be appropriate in this case, given some concerns that if it is approved by council, there could be a path forward, at least in place, to begin work to make this safe sooner, as opposed to waiting for the council to act, then coming back through this process after the fact. So procedurally, there may be some more things coming your way on that and some more important decisions to make in the near future.
Are there ways to make this safe without taking it down? They just cost more, isn't that right?
I can speak to that if you'd like, or we may, I don't know when the best forum for that discussion is, if it's when we consider a COA. Commissioner Sturbaum, I would say right now that we don't believe, let me just say in summary, that we don't believe securing it now will help, will take any less time than what it would take to secure it long term, okay? So there are really two options the structural engineer has identified for stabilizing it, which involves steel framing or more of a piping structure. Both of those costs and the time to get it done, the cost is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, as we have seen estimates on, and the timing would not, we may very well run into, by the time that work gets all the due diligence done and the work could actually begin, we may be at a spot where restoration work would have already begun. So I guess the stabilization timeline could stand in the way of long-term repair is what I'm trying to say. So we could talk more about that at our next meeting as the COA comes forward, but that's the current assessment. We think a COA is the best place for this, which is why we encouraged action tonight so we could keep this moving. So.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. I move to adjourn.
Second. That was my next one.
Is that?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.